How's it going, everyone? It is your host, Paul, here at the Last Call Fantasy Football Podcast here on February 16th. So it's Family Day weekend here in Canada, and I've had a really good long weekend with the fam. Just took the daughter skating and all that. But I would like to welcome my co-host for the day, Bobby Briscoe. Welcome back to the podcast. It's been a minute, but I'm happy you took some time on your long weekend to join us here today.
Really good to be here. Glad to be back on the podcast.
Yeah, I know you were the one that you were one of the friends I had that kept on asking, when are you gonna get that podcast going again? It was a lot of fun just to sit around and shoot the shit about podcasting and football and all that, and like happy to give us that platform back. So once again, thank you for jumping on. Got a great episode here for everyone today. We are going to be doing a bit of a deep dive into some kind of, I guess, overarching football trends that we've noticed, especially from this past season, and kind of find some examples of what we see these trends to be lending themselves to when it comes to some of the big offensive football, some of the big fantasy outputs we've seen from this season, and maybe where the league is headed. That when it comes to play calling and risk aversion and all that stuff, and then we're also going to be going into a couple off-season, I guess. Changes that I think are extremely relevant to a lot of the big fantasy football players and their, I guess, upcoming seasons, how these changes may affect their upcoming 2026 season. So, with all that said, I think it's time, Bobby, that we ring the bell. Last call. With the whistle.
Got to do that. That's a key step in this whole operation.
Of course. So, how before we get into it, Bobby, you know, we we've talked a lot about you know, past fantasy success that you've had. What do you think is something that you've really kind of leaned on from like a fantasy perspective to, or at least like, do you have like a northern light that you have when it comes to drafting, or when it comes to, how you're going to manage your team and when it comes to a season?
Um, that's a great question. I like to think I've done well in fantasy football. I've done fairly well in a lot of fantasy sports as well. I've had some success in fantasy hockey over the years too. Um, I think my main thing that is my northern light is bet on talent and don't panic. That's my kind of main strategy that I go with, is that I don't try to overthink things. I try to just bet on whatever the best players are, and not make any panic moves. I try to just stick with my guys, don't overthink it, and let the chips fall where they may. That's kind of the thing that I've relied on in hockey, in football, in any other fantasy sport that I get dragged into, which is way too many of them. But
Well, I feel like I'm the complete opposite, where I always overthink things, and I'm always trying to be one step ahead of the curve. And I mean, I've been called out by many friends in the fact that I love to trade, especially like when I think I'm making a slick move, and I'm trying to find those little margins of victory when it comes to making a trade. And maybe it doesn't seem like an obvious win at the time, but maybe I'm looking ahead into the future a little bit for some of these players. Like I picked up I made a trade for Colston Loveland in my keeper league this year, which I thought
okay.
was, I mean, I was sitting on nothing for most of the season, and he only kind of emerged at the tail end, but a potential a potential thing for maybe next season.
Yeah.
Don't know if I'll keep
I,
him, but
I I think that fits in though, right? That's betting on talent. That's a player who has all the physical tools. He's in a great situation. They throw the ball to him, and that's the kind of player that you want to be picking up, right?
I've also made the trade of JSN for Cedric Tillman before JSN took off, and I've also made the trade for Puka Nakua for Jamison Williams. And to look back and think that I could have had two, like the top two dynasty wide receivers on my roster this year if I had just been patient, that's a bit of a kick in the groin that I have to remind myself. That's my new like mantra this time around is like just be patient. Like you said, like these players were drafted highly, they're producing, like they've shown flashes. Doesn't mean sell high. It means hold on to talent
Mhm.
maybe. Like I got to learn
Mhm.
that lesson the hard way, and I've
And I
certainly
will
learned that.
say, if I'm going to criticize myself, looking at my dynasty roster as it stood at the end of this past season, I had a bunch of guys rotting on my bench whose prime days were behind them, and yeah, I got all the juice out of them that I could, but eventually it would be guys that I just have to cut, and they eventually retire, and got some wins out of them, but definitely didn't get any assets out of them at the end of the day either. So,
Yeah.
you can maybe be too patient sometimes too.
Yeah, and you know what? I like your overarching theme of like betting on talent because I think some of the topics we're going to get into today are going to bend that rule a little bit if I can be so bold to say so. We'll get into
Mhm.
that. I think where I want to start today, you did a great job outlining some really kind of overarching themes that you've picked up on from watching the sport, and you coach the sport, so you start to see some trends developing in the NFL. So what's maybe like the first overarching trend that people should be aware of, um, like kind of league wide when it comes to predicting what's going to happen in the future?
Right. Yeah. So then this has been talked about a lot in a lot of different like fantasy football podcasts, but the pendulum, right? Is it running backs or wide receivers, and how that pendulum just floats back and forth from year to year. This past year, we had 6 running backs with over 300 fantasy points. CMC had over 400 fantasy points in PPR leagues, and only 4 wide receivers reached the 300-point threshold this year. So the pendulum has swung to the running back side. So what's going on in football that's happening, and also can we expect that to stay the same? The other interesting thing in terms of like looking at position players that I've noticed this past year is tight ends. This was a really good year to maybe be a tight end zero strategy in a draft, because there was a bunch of tight ends that had reasonable production throughout the year. Maybe not great explosive league winning production unless your name is McBride, but there was lots of tight ends that were putting up consistent points on a weekly basis as well. So what's going on in the league that's happening? That was something that I wanted to kind of do a dive into.
Yeah, like to your point, I mean, for the last, I want to say last 5, 6 years, the whole kind of rule of thumb is, draft those wide receivers, get them early, get them young, because they are going to maintain value longer. I think to your point, it probably has swung a little bit too far that way.
Mm-hmm.
If especially if you look at predicting the next year's first round for redraft or startup drafts or anything like that, when you look at the top picks, they're probably going to be running backs. Like you want your Bijan, you want your Jameer Gibbs, you want um, Christian McCaffrey's probably still going to be a great value, even though he's labeled as old and labeled as he's just had over 400 touches and all that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think to your point, the league has certainly shifted back towards a bit more of a run balanced approach. And to do that, I feel like I mean, Sean McVay did this first, but it seems like everyone's copycatted him now when it comes to having multiple tight ends on the field. So
Mm-hmm.
passing out of those heavy sets is something that you see the Rams do. You see the Seahawks, who just won the Super Bowl. They did it extremely well. I mean, everyone's picking up on this trend because if you can successfully keep the defense in base personnel where they have to have heavy guys on to defend the run because they're expecting run because you have 3 tight ends or 2 tight ends and a running back in the backfield. Now all of a sudden, if you have a tight end like Colby Parkinson, a Trey McBride, you have all these tight ends like a Brock Bowers. I think he's going to be interesting discussion this offseason.
Mhm.
There's all these receiving options that are labeled as tight ends. You get your Harold Fannin. He was wide receiver or tight end 5 this year in points. Like he was a rookie that was taken in the third round, but because Cleveland leaned into the Njoku and Harold Fannin, set, he just had opportunity and he's took advantage of that opportunity. So
Tight end 6. He got beat by by Warren by 1 point
well,
in the year,
there you go.
but yeah, they're right in there.
And you like, sorry, one last thing, like you see teams drafting tight ends more proactively now. Like you see the Bears take
Mhm.
Colson Loveland at 10. You see the Colts take Tyler Warren at 13 or 14, whatever it was. You see Brock Bowers go in that top 15 the previous season. Like they are emphasizing this position, and if you can get them on that rookie deal, that's even a better value for your roster. Go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. No, I just kind of back up what you're saying with some numbers. Defensive side of the ball, defensive personnel usage has been in base 29.6% of the time this year, up from 23.5% of the time last year. And I think that
Interesting.
speaks to the run heaviness of what's going on here. They're moving away from the nickel packages and moving back into more of a base. But looks of man coverage are way down as well. Teams are playing zone, close to 80% of the time. And really on the defensive side of the ball, it seems to be this overarching idea of limit big plays, keep the ball in front of you, and hope that offenses stall themselves out over the course of a drive with incomplete passes, penalties, those sorts of things. So allow those run plays, those short throws, allow that all day. That offense is going to stall itself out with a mistake somewhere along the lines, and then your offense can pick up the ball from there, right?
Yeah. So
So,
the other point to that, I was listening to, who was I listening to? Maybe it was I can't remember. I want to make sure I give credit to where credit's due, but I think a huge reason why teams are leaning into zone more than man, um, is because of this coming of age of all these rushing quarterbacks. Like if you're
mhm,
if you're playing man or cover 2 man and the quarterback's sitting back there and nothing's open, but everyone's got their back turned to them because they have to play man coverage on this specific receiver, then I think they have it a responsibility to themselves to limit the big play of the quarterback because you have the Drake Mays now, the Jaden Daniels. You still have Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. Like there's like a flattening of this tier of really good rushing quarterbacks now.
mhm,
And I mean, Joe Burrow is probably the only quarterback we still think of as like a top tier quarterback that only works out of the pocket. But I mean,
mhm.
when he gets on the run, what he clocked in at 21 miles an hour, like not last year, maybe the year before, on a rush. Like these guys can move, and they're athletes now. They're not just pocket passers.
Yeah, these every quarterback who's in the NFL has some ability to get something done with their feet, right? Yeah, and that all plays into this conversation of the wide receiver running back pendulum, right? You're getting more production out of these running backs who are, active in a passing game, who are, getting these little chip plays, these little short routes down the field, and these sorts of things. And those big bomb plays down the field aren't happening quite as much, it seems. So,
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see how that pendulum will swing because it's a league of adjustments, right? Their teams will adjust to this. And we'll see how far things end up swinging this way before they start to swing back the other way.
Well, I think a good team to watch will be the Buffalo Bills. They will be the canary in the coal mine for what happens after this pendulum swing to the running backs, because for the past 2 or 3 seasons without Stephon Diggs, they've effectively operated without a number one receiver. And they say, we have Josh Allen. He's the best quarterback in the league. He can sling the ball to whoever's out there, and we're just going to lean on the run game. When all else fails, we'll go jumbo with an extra offensive lineman, and we'll just go smash mouth until they decide to creep up, and then we'll hit the bomb. So it is. I'm very curious to see what the Buffalo Bills that do this offseason, whether they draft a receiver. I mean, they're kind of a sweet spot to maybe get that third or fourth receiver off the top of the rookie board when it comes to receivers. Do they trade for an AJ Brown? Do they trade for something like that? I think that would be really exciting, and I think that's going to tell us a lot about where the league's heading because the Bills were one of the first teams to kind of lean into this run heavy approach. Everyone saw they were doing it well, and then the league follows.
Yeah, absolutely. One other thing, just in a general trend, and this I'm not sure how and to what this degree affects the fantasy landscape. I guess it depends a pretty big deal if your league has kickers or not. But what's gone on with kicking in the last year has been really, really fascinating. So for those of you who don't know this, the league made a change in its rules for kickers this past year, where it allowed kickers to prep their balls ahead of time. So K balls could be prepped before the game. It used to be they only got the balls shortly before the game and they had limited time to work them in, but now they get the balls well in advance and they have time to do basically all of the breaking them in that they want to do with these balls. And it's led to a huge uptick in the success of field goals and long field goals. So some stats on this here. Kickers hit 40 to 49-yard field goals this year, 84% of the time, which was an NFL league record, the highest that's been since 2013. And we saw the record broken for longest field goal this year, 68 yards by Cam Little, which is just ridiculous.
That's almost 70% of the field. Like,
Yeah.
what are we doing? It's
Yeah.
I think so. To your point, with that rule change, along with the new kickoff rule, where the ball, if you decide to kick a kickoff to a touchback, they're starting on the 35.
Mm-hmm.
You're already 40% of the way to what you need for a field goal. Like you only really
Yeah.
need 15 to 20 yards at that point. You need like one first down and a good rush to get
Yeah.
into field goal range for these kickers now. So I think the league's going to do something about that because I don't think anyone's signing up to watch more field goals. I don't.
We saw that in the Super Bowl, right? Like three
Well,
field goals in the first half.
exactly. Like I don't think anyone's signing up for more field goals, in my opinion. And Lord knows, I
The,
mean, our leagues don't have kickers, so it's not like we're like clamoring for more kicking. And it's
mhm. The thing that I find interesting with this, though, is at the same time, coaches in the league have started going for it on fourth down a record amount of the time as
yeah,
well. The go for it rate on a 4th and 1 in 2014 was 42%, and in 2024 it was 71%.
yeah.
So coaches are going for it on fourth down situations. And where does the flip happen in terms of, well, maybe now the move is to be just kicking that field goal as opposed to trying to go for it in that situation?
Just
It's
ask
an
the
interesting
Broncos.
it's an interesting balance. Exactly. We saw that in the playoffs, right? With the
Yeah,
Broncos leaving points on the board potentially that could have put them over the top in that game.
yeah, and I think it's not just going for it on fourth down. It's like the aggressiveness of which they're going for it on fourth down. Like the
Mhm.
Ben Johnson in the playoff game against the Rams, I think it was, went for it on fourth down inside his own 30. Like I think
Yeah.
there was a commentator or a coach or something that went up to him after the game and said, "Hey man, I like aggressiveness, but that was straight up crazy." Like
Mhm.
I mean, you see more of that. You see, it doesn't have to be 4th and 1 or 4th and 2. It could be 4th and 5. And if the coaching staff has faith in their quarterback and they know they have like a guy that can get open, quick or otherwise, it does seem like they're not only just going for it on fourth down more, but the the threshold that it takes for them to go for it on fourth down now is just non-existent. Like it can be any down and distance. It seems like a lot of coaches are starting to lean into a bit more of an aggressive style, which I love for fantasy football. Keep the offense out there, get more
Yeah.
points.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that plays into what we were talking about earlier, right? Because, in these fourth and whatever situations, that's a opportunity for a quarterback to scramble. That's an opportunity for a running back to pick up, a few extra yards, right? That's an opportunity for the tight end to get checked down to. You
Yep.
want the to go to your safety blanket, and for a lot of quarterbacks, that's the tight end, right?
Yep.
So,
No, it's an astute observation, and I wanted to just like add in those examples as well because it's I mean it's that down that gets us as fans to like sit up in our seats like, oh man, they're actually going for this. Like it's exciting, and it's another opportunity for any of those positive outcomes to come about. And almost like kicking, I don't think anyone's signing up to watch more punts. Like, how often is a punt actually returned these days? Sure, you can get the exciting one every now and then. You get the Rashid Shaheed punt return for the, basically help get the Seahawks over the Rams in that late season game, and those are
mhm.
always exciting. But more often than not, they're sticking up their hand for a fair catch, and I don't think that's adding anything to the game. So I think more offense, more suspense, that adds to the game, and I'm sure the NFL loves it, and we love it as fantasy fans too. I think.
Absolutely, absolutely, I do.
Excellent. Okay. Were there any other trends that you wanted to touch on before we jump into some of these off-season news lines that I think are really important for folks to pay attention to?
I think that sums up everything. But the one kind of thing that I'll just kind of cap off and mention is, how are the offenses going to adjust to this, and what does that look like? And one interesting thing is that pre-snap motion is way up from what it used to be.
Right.
Hugely, about 60% of the time, you're seeing offenses in motion pre-snap, and I think that'll be an interesting thing to keep an eye on in terms of how these adjustments happen, and how offenses kind of start to try and eat away at the new strategies that defenses are bringing to the table. But
Yeah, certainly. And it's the defenses that can really mask what they're doing. Because like when you put a guy in motion in offense, you're trying to get a read on what the defense is doing, and you're trying to
mhm,
get guys, going full speed at the snap of the ball. Like it is a offense positive thing to do to have guys in motion. And you look at
mhm,
the Seahawks, who do an extremely good job of masking who's coming from where and who's blitzing
mhm,
and not blitzing, and they're showing a blitz, but the offense doesn't have time to adjust to it, or they do adjust to it, but it's wrong. Like I think that's the magic that a lot of people are trying to capture from
mhm.
Mike McDonald. You see, what was his defensive coordinator that just got hired to? I want to say Jesse Mincer. Where did he go? Oh my gosh, I should know this. Dolphins? Did he go to the Dolphins? I think he did.
we're,
Anyhow,
we're already into the clients here. It's all good.
yeah. Okay. So anyway, that is certainly something to keep an eye on.
Mhm. I think it'll be an interesting thing, and this is something I've never seen looked at in terms of a fantasy relevance. But players who are in motion ahead of the snap and how that correlates to fantasy point production. That'd be something I'd be interested to see stats on.
Well, you think of, I mean, this will be a topic for when we get into kind of these off-season things, but Mike McDaniel was the one who really overemphasized the pre-snap motion, and that's when you had Tyreek Hill go for 1,800 yards and 16
Mm-hmm.
touchdowns or whatever it was, and Jalen Waddle had a great season. And I think people have been chasing that, and I think it's important to include it, but you still have there is complexity when you add motion. I mean, just
Mm-hmm.
ask me as like an offensive coordinator for my high school team. I'm trying to install a play, and these kids it throws off timing. Like
Exactly.
unless you have it down pat, it does throw off timing for the quarterback and the receivers. So you do have to be precise with it. But if you can be, it's a huge advantage.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Okay, fantastic, man. I love it. Good work. I think, like I said in the my episode 0, like I want there to be stats, but I don't want to be so stat driven that we can't just like sit here and just like talk off the dome about what we're seeing and like what we think is going to happen and all that stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a good balance there. Awesome stuff. Um, Maybe what we'll do now is we can get into my first off-season storyline that I think is going to be something that everybody has to pay attention to. Um, and that is Clint Kubiak being hired as the head coach to the Raiders. Um, what does it mean? Because like when he was in Seattle, he was very run heavy. They were very inefficient with the run early in the season. You kind of saw uh, the run game start to take off towards the back half of the season and into the playoffs, certainly. Um, but he was always very run heavy because he wants to use the run to set up play action for those big shots to JSN this past season. Um, and there's definitely not a JSN on the Raiders, but they do have weapons like we talked about off the top. So they were very much an outside zone team. You know, they're trying to find their. I think this is actually going to work well for the Raiders because I think I could be wrong on this, but from what I saw, the Raiders seem to do a lot of they kind of use zone and like heavy like gap scheme runs for Genty because Genty can do it all. But
Mhm.
I think the zone will work better for the Raiders because they only really have one viable offensive lineman right now, and their left tackle. And running a zone, what it does is it does allow your offensive line to work together rather than relying on one-on-one matchups. So I think at least scheme wise, that should lend itself to Ashton Genty, or the running back tandem that they end up having in the backfield. And I think they'll end up leaning more into heavy sets. Like I know the Raiders, they have two very good tight ends. They have Brock Bowers, who had an injury laden season this past year, but they also have Michael Mayer, who probably is underused and undervalued on that team. So I think they can probably lean into those heavier sets with maybe Jack Besh, who was basically a non-factor in the offense this past year, but he's kind of prototypes as that big slot. So
Mhm.
if you use him as like your Cooper Cup type, along with your two tight ends, I think you're cooking in the run game a little bit. Um, and then of course sorry, I'm rambling. Go ahead. If you want to
I
jump
was
in
just going
here.
to say the big question is who's under center.
Mm,
That's the big question mark that I have in looking at this team and looking at this roster, because you're right, they have pieces there, and I really like what they have going at tight end. That's something to lean into, but where's the ball coming from?
yeah, so I think that's a good place for us to maybe start with this team specifically because it seems like everyone right now seems to firmly believe that uh, Fernando Mendoza will be the number one overall pick to the Raiders. I'm just pulling up FanDuel here to give you the latest odds on his the likelihood of him going number one overall. Give me a sec here, but I'm pretty sure it was something like it's still minus 7,000 for him to be the number one overall pick. And I think the question I'd ask you, Bobby, is I'm not sure how much Mendoza you've watched or what you think of him, but do you think I think he's probably worthy of the number one overall pick in this draft. Is there any reason why the Raiders wouldn't select him and trade down?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Um, that's where they need, right? That's the position of need for them.
Number
I'm
one.
just looking. I'm just looking up. I'm trying to look up the draft ranking here, just to see what other quarterbacks are potentially on the table. And you got to
Uh,
go way down to Ty Simpson
yeah.
to get another quarterback, and that's a downgrade. The one thing I'm trying to find right now that I can't, and maybe you have it in front of you
Mm.
a little bit easier. How tall is Mendoza?
He's like 6'4", 6'5". He's a big boy.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That is pretty good.
Yeah.
Um, I think that might be the answer to the question for them. The only issue is, again, then you're running out of rookie quarterback, right?
Yeah.
Now, you do have other quarterbacks in that room, which can maybe shelter him a little bit. So maybe it's a situation where you are bringing somebody back to start the year, and Mendoza gets worked in throughout the season. But this is the kind of league where patience is not often taken with these kinds of
Yeah.
situations either, right?
I don't think Vegas fans whatever a Las Vegas fan is going to appreciate a Geno Smith trotting out there week one
No.
To give Mendoza time. He is a bit of an older prospect. He's 23 or 24, so he's going to be thrust into the starting job, come hell or high water. I think that he has the mental fortitude to like maintain and sustain himself through the 17 game season. I think he does, whatever that looks like. And my worry, as it is with every rookie quarterback, first off, is the offensive line and the situation is not perfect, so it's going to be a tough thing, a tough pill to like. It's going to be tough regardless. Like the Patriots went from like maybe the 31st or 32nd offensive line last year, maybe to like middle of the pack this year, just with throwing money around and like drafting a Will Campbell and a Jared Wilson. Um, but Mendoza, if they're going to spend the number one overall pick on their quarterback, they're not going to get a tackle in this draft that's going to be worthy of starting on this offensive line. So
No.
they're going to have to look at free agency. I think they have some, financial wiggle room. Not the most, that's for sure. Like there's going to be dead money from the Geno Smith. Like they're going to have to cut him. And I think he was a 2 or 3 year deal. Uh, they're not the most. It's not a super stable situation, right? I think they're still paying Gruden. They're still paying like 3 or 4 head coaches at this point. Um,
Place
if
is a mess, to be
it's
quite
a
honest.
it's not good. And I think if there was a quarterback or a guy that could like rise above, it's probably is Mendoza. But that said, like history has not been kind to rookie quarterbacks. To your point, so as high as okay, so a little bit of a you know, I'll give you a little peek behind the curtain. I'm very high on Brock Bowers this coming season. Um,
Mhm.
and I think he was just injured this past season, and the situation was not good, and Geno Smith was playing scared, and the offensive line sucked. So everything just sucked.
Mhm.
If there's a fraction of like competent play across the board, and now you have like a Clint Kubiak who's like an offensive genius, maybe. I mean, everyone gets labeled as the offensive genius, is like
We'll get to another one here in a minute.
right, and does he end up I think just that incremental change will be enough for Brock Bowers to kind of reassert himself as that tight end one or tight end two, where
Mhm.
at least there's some, I don't want to call it certainty because it's certainly uncertain what's going on in Las Vegas, but same could be said for Arizona. Like it's another franchise in turmoil. Trey McBride's
Mhm.
been the dude the last 2 seasons, no doubt. But at the same time, new head coach, new offensive coordinator, probably new quarterback, whatever that means. Um, and we'll have to see how that goes for them. But I think I would throw my chips in on a discounted Brock Bowers, and I don't think I'm the only one that's seeing this. I think a lot
No,
of people are probably going to figure this out.
I mean, this kind of gets back to something I was talking about right at the start, right? In terms of betting on talent, Brock Bowers is the kind of guy who's, I hesitant to say quarterback proof, but he's going to get his, right? And in, a new offensive scheme, being healthy this year, hopefully, you can cross your fingers for that.
Yeah,
He's going to have a good year, I think. I think things will work out for him that way. Whether that Brock Bowers having a good year is the same as the Vegas Raiders having a good year, that's a different question, right?
absolutely, absolutely. So, excuse me. The next player that we have to talk about that matters on the Raiders really quick is Ashton Genty. Like I said,
Mm-hmm.
I do think the Clint Kubiak system will benefit Genty with the heavier sets, with the zone scheme. I think that will benefit him. He can run any scheme you want, but I think this will work for the offensive line that they have, or whoever they end up bringing in during this offseason to try and cement that group. I think it'll be a good scheme change for him. But just last season, over 300 touches. He was sub 4 yards a carry. He had
Mm-hmm.
over 50 catches, and he ended up finishing as like I think it was running back 15 or 16, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I do think I would say there's an optimistic side to all this. I think I would lean on the optimistic side for him to have a better season. But that said, I think I heard a stat that said running backs with a rookie quarterback on average finish with around 7.5 touchdowns in that season with the rookie quarterback. So not something that's going to break your back, but it's not like he's going to be out there putting up 16 touchdowns like a Todd Gurley or anything.
Just a quick little Ashton Genty stat here, which is incredibly interesting.
Yeah.
He averaged only 1.6 yards before contact per carry. He was getting hit as soon as he touched the ball. 863 of his 975 total rushing yards came after contact. So he was having to break tackles all damn season.
And you
So
saw it. You saw it on the
yep,
screen, man. Like
yep,
it
that
was it
matches
was
the eye test.
it was UGLY ugly.
Mm-hmm.
But
So yeah.
the one stat that I saw was that running backs who got at least a yard or two of runway before contact, he actually was better than Bijan when it came to yards um, accrued after that first point of contact. He was just a little bit better than Bijan. So, like we know he's good. It's just a
Mm-hmm.
matter of like how good can the team and how good can the situation be around him. Was he a reach last year for the Raiders? Yes, that he was a luxury pick that they didn't have the luxury of taking, and now they're going to be looking at a draft this year where they're going to have to take a quarterback, and I don't know where the other reinforcements are going to come from if they can't like outspend some of these other franchises that have the cap space.
If we can just take a moment here, in terms of building an NFL team, it's kind of almost like they've done this backwards, right? They went with the running back and they spent the luxury pick on that. Now they're going for the quarterback, and then they're going to have to figure out a line around them, right? Used to be back in the day, you'd get the quarterback, you'd get the line, and then you'd worry about the running back later,
Yeah.
right? So it seems like they've kind of put the cart before the horse here a little bit, but
Well, this,
they have a good horse. So
well, this is why I ask the question about do the Raiders stay and pick Mendoza? Because if they wanted to, in theory, the next teams behind them, the Jets, the Cardinals, even the Browns down at 6, all need a quarterback.
mhm.
And I can tell you right now, the Jets and the Browns have multiple first round picks in this draft. Do the Jets make a crazy move to go up one spot and they offer the second pick this year and one of their first next year or whatever to go up and get Mendoza, where in theory, the Jets actually have a pretty good situation in terms of the offensive line. They have some
Mhm.
weapons. They have Garrett Wilson. They've got another first round pick this year that they could use on a receiver. They've got A.D. Mitchell for whatever he is. They got
Mhm.
Brees Hall, who it sounds like they're not ready to let go of just yet.
Mhm.
Um, so that I mean, the Jets could realistically look at that and be like, you know what? We are in such a state of disarray, and our fans are about to like come and like raid the Capitol building.
They're
That
knocking on the door with pitchforks.
that I mean, how do you not at least make that phone call? Because they've done the dirty work. They've shed their veterans. They lost Sauce Gardner. They lost Quincy Williams, and I think that'd be a fun thing to explore. And
Mhm.
then the Raiders, they're moving down one spot. They can take someone on defense. They can take an offensive lineman. They can take some of these guys. Like this whole, I think it's these what ifs are a lot of fun, and
Mhm.
we could spend all day talking about the fucking Raiders, but let's not do that.
It's a fascinating situation, though. You're not wrong.
Yeah,
I'm interested to see how this is going to play out actually at the draft. So
yeah, 100%. So you know what? We may not even have time to get to my third one, but let's spend some time on this second one because I think this is very fantasy relevant. This is Mike McDaniel being hired as the offensive coordinator to the Chargers.
oh boy.
So another offensive genius that has been, you know, rightfully or wrongfully, like ousted of his coaching situation. I did not think that they were going to fire him. I think when the Dolphins saw some of these other high profile coaches getting fired, they thought maybe they could upgrade. And then none of them actually went to Miami. So now they're like, all right, Jesse Minter, I guess. Um, if that is who's the head coach there, I think it is. And Mike McDaniel, I think you had this in your notes. He's in no rush to take on a bad situation as a head coach. Like he can
Yeah.
go to a good situation, a team that's made the playoffs 2 of the last 3 years, and has a quarterback, has weapons. Offensive line needs some fortifying, but
Mhm.
there's a lot of stuff to work with there.
Mhm. This is a thing across all sports. You only get so many kicks at the can, right? Until you're done. So you only get so many shots at being an NFL head coach. So for McDaniel, this is like almost a perfect situation. He gets to go to a team where he has all these weapons. He gets to kind of ride the coattails here for a little bit, and then hopefully after some success, he gets to go and be a head coach again somewhere else. Or even if they don't succeed, he can always say, "Well, wasn't me. I wasn't the head coach here. I was a good head coach though back in the day, right?" And he can have another track at the can. So this is almost foolproof for him. Like
Yeah,
it would have to go really south for him to not have a shot at a head coaching job again someday.
and I just don't see that being the case with this situation that they have, cooking up in Los Angeles. We're talking about Amarian Hampton, who I think it's a real shame that he never really got started this season. Like he really only gave you 4 weeks of fantasy viable play, but you saw the flashes, right? And he was just so hurt and dealing with that high ankle sprain for the majority of the season. Like it was a miracle he even came back at the end. I don't think he was healthy in that playoff game against the Patriots either. Like he had 2 carries or 3 carries or something before Vidal just went in and they gave him the lion's share. Um, yeah, so I think to give a bit of a profile on McDaniel, I think what you could expect is a lot of speed, a lot of motion based offense. We're going to be seeing a lot of pre snap motion for the receivers, maybe getting the running back out as a receiver as well. That was something that he obviously used Achan, very well at. Hey, let's just line him up in the slot. He's as good as a receiver as anyone else we got, and just feed him, 70 catches on the season, whatever it was. So I think Amarian Hampton has shown some capability as a receiver. I liked his receiving capabilities. I think it was maybe around this time last year we did our rookie review, and I said, "Hey, Amarian Hampton can go run these down the field routes," and I thought he was
Mm-hmm.
very, good at that. So that could be something to watch.
Yeah.
Obviously, just physically gifted as a runner. I think he finished, yeah, I have it here. He finished with 737 scrimmage yards, 5 total touchdowns over the course of however many games he ended up playing, which is obviously nothing to write home about. I mean, my question to you, I guess the first question is, where is he going to go in our dynasty startup draft in a couple months?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure about Hampton specifically, but I will say any offensive player in a McDaniel system, I am keeping an eye on. And I am especially interested if they draft an offensive player in this year's rookie draft, because that is a player that McDaniel will have seen and said, I want him in my system
Mm,
for whatever reason. So this year, next year, if he's still there, if they draft, someone with a decent amount of draft capital,
sure.
I am very interested in that player. But yeah, I think I have my eye on Hampton. I have my eye on Ladd as well. I think McConkey is going to be someone to keep an eye on.
Doesn't
Uh,
he feel like the perfect? I mean, he's not. No one is Tyreek Hill. I'm not going to say that. But doesn't he feel like he's that separator? He's that man beater. He's that receiver that you can get in motion and just do funny things with to make the defense look stupid. Like,
mhm,
I mean, he had
yep.
technically a down season this year, 66 catches, 789 yards through 16 games played. Did not look like his rookie self, to be honest. I traded him in our dynasty league before we decided to hit the reset button, but
Mhm.
I think a bounce back is certainly in the cards for him as well.
Now, okay, let's really get we're close to the end of the beer here, so
Yeah,
let's really get speculating. This kind of brings in with the news item that we're maybe not time to fully dive into here today, but Tyreek Hill released by the Dolphins. Where does he land? And are the
hmm.
Chargers a potential fit for that with McDaniel there now?
um, I think that relationship soured enough that I don't think McDaniel would go out of his way to bring Tyreek Hill in. He could certainly give a full scope to the general manager and the head coach
Mhm.
on Tyreek Hill and the pluses and minuses. I mean, what was Tyreek Hill's injury was like a dislocated knee, like it was the Nick Chubb
Oh
kind of
yeah,
thing. Like I'm
yeah, it was real
happy,
bad.
I'm happy I never saw it, but it sounded like it was a full blown bad situation with that knee. So
It was borderline like, why is that leg still attached?
okay,
Kind of a situation. It was real bad.
great. So don't need to see it.
No,
Don't want to think about it.
regret
But
that I saw it.
I don't see how he comes back fully healthy this season, to be honest. Like if I were him, take the year, do your rehabilitation. He'll be 32, 33 at
He's
this point.
32. Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, he's made his money. I wouldn't be surprised if he hung up the cleats. But I don't know.
That would be a wise thing for him to do. However, no one's really accusing Tyreek Hill of making wise decisions.
Also
So,
fair. Also fair. Baller's gonna ball. So
yeah.
sometimes, despite what's good for them, they do decide to make that choice. I don't know.
Mhm.
I think I don't think the Chargers would be the first team because I think they feel good about what they have in Ladd and they have in
Mhm.
QJ. Um, they got some other receivers in the wings that can be some field stretchers. So I don't think they would be the first place. I saw someone Photoshop Tyreek Hill in a Raiders jersey, and I'm
Mhm.
like, yeah, that'd be pretty Tyreek Hill thing to do to go sign there.
Yeah, it
Um,
would be. Yeah.
I don't see that. I don't think anyone's going to be picking up the phone anytime soon. Didn't he have like a domestic thing as well this past season that they're
Oh,
gonna?
he's had all kinds of stuff. He's yeah,
Yeah,
he's tracking down the same pathway that we've seen some of these
yeah,
other late in their career wide receivers go in
yeah.
the last few years.
And
Um,
sorry,
but
yeah, sorry.
he's
Yeah, last thing here. I think what we also saw with McDaniel, when people started to figure out his gimmicks on offense and they started just dropping a little bit deeper or whatever, his wrinkle was to go to the tight end. So
mm,
Jonnu Smith had that huge tight end season 2 years ago. Darren Waller was scoring 2 touchdowns a game before he got hurt this season. Like,
mhm.
does that signal to you that Oronde Gadsden could be like a tight end that everyone needs to be highlighting on their paper?
Possibly. Although part of it, I wonder, and this is another kind of X factor in going to the Chargers. He was dealing with Tua as his quarterback there, or with not Tua all the times that Tua was hurt, right? What does the McDaniel system with Justin Herbert look like? And how is he taking advantage of Herbert differently? And it might be that tight end look, but there is so many more options that Herbert opens up for a Michael Daniel offense with the
Yeah.
strength of his arm, his just physical ability that Tua never had, right?
Yeah, this was the question before he even got fired from Miami. Like, okay, we know that he's a good play caller. He can scheme up guys. What does he look like with an actual quarterback? And
Mhm.
we didn't have to wait around in Miami to see what that mess was going to end up being. He just got put with one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Um,
Mhm.
I'm happy you brought that up because I forgot to write it down on my sheet here, but that was something I wanted to mention. It's like now we get to see. No excuses, McDaniel. That you've got a
Yeah.
guy that can put the ball anywhere on the field. You've got weapons. The offensive line did not perform well. Obviously, Joe Alt was hurt. Slater ruptured his patella tendon. So that's a tough injury to come back from, but it is doable. So if they get those two tackles back, Mekhi Becton, I think, was their guard, one of their big signings, and he didn't play well. So if they can shore up the interior, and they're in a good spot, like this draft, it doesn't have a lot of good tackles, but it has a lot of good guards. So if they
Mhm.
if they can get one of those top guards, like what's his name, Ianu or something like that from Penn State, he's like a mauler when it comes to being that guard position. If they get him at where they're drafting in the mid 20s, I think that goes a long way. So I
Mhm.
think they are not so far away as the Raiders are. They're not so far away as the Browns are when it comes to their offensive line situations. I
Mhm.
think this can be turned around pretty quickly, and Mike McDaniel might be that, gasoline on the fire that really, ignites this thing.
In terms of players to watch in a startup league and a redraft league, I've got Herbert circled as somebody to really keep your eye on, and he could easily be a top five quarterback in the league this year.
Yeah, I'm drafting 7 in our dynasty startup in a couple months, and I got Hampton circled as a like let's keep an eye on this for the next couple months and start like
Mhm.
seeing what comes out of camp and what they do in free agency to shore things up. You know what? I think that's a good spot for us to finish today. What we can do is we can save these free agent conversations for another episode. And that, I mean, this is a season or an off season where we saw 10 coaching changes. And with 10 coaching changes means new offensive and new defensive coordinators for each of those teams as well. So,
Mhm.
like a third of the league just turned over at
Yeah,
the coach level, and it's going to be so cool to dive into this all off season. I mean, free agency is usually, I mean, last year, or the year before, we were blessed with a crazy free agency period. But
we
this
had the carousel of running backs. Every running back seemed like they were going to a new team. This year, we've had the carousel of coaches. Every coach seems like they're going to a new team.
Yeah, so I think that's gonna be a good fuel for content over the next couple weeks and months. And of course, like I don't think there's any big name receivers hitting free agency that are really worth talking about too much. Like I think George Pickens will end up getting franchise tagged or signed there in Dallas, but the running back position, it could be another year where we see some big names changing jerseys, and that'll be fun. Okay. All right. With all that said, I think that's going to do it for us, guys. I hope you enjoyed. And if you're new to the channel, please hit like and subscribe. I know it's the most difficult thing in the world to do, but we ask anyway. If you're having fun talking about this stuff and you want to leave a comment, please do. We'll do our best to make sure we answer any questions, and especially once we get into the regular season, we're going to be doing start sit discussions and all that. So feel free to drop those in too. A lot of fun, man. Good to have you back, Bobby.
Good to be back talking football on the podcast. This felt great, and I'm excited to keep the conversation going throughout the summer, and very excited for next football season.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. Okay, folks, that's going to do it for us. Until next time, this is Last Call Fantasy Football Podcast, and we'll see you soon.